Hello, everyone. My name is Rishabh, and I will take you through the findings of my thesis. My thesis is titled Account Planning and Advertising Agency Investigation for Reinventing the Function. I would like to start with just defining this term account planning, while most of you might be aware of it, for those who may not be. Account planning is really a function within the advertising agency, and it is defined as the process of integrating consumer insights into the creative strategy and brand communication process. To lead up to what my thesis has done, I would like to first start with a bit of the understanding of the literature. I'm going to divide this into three phases of the birth of the function, the rise of the function, and the fall. And in the fall section is where I will define the gap. Account planning was born about 60 years ago. Increasingly, a lot of brands were advertising. There was a lot of clutter. It was felt that brand messaging is not effective anymore. So everyone believed that it needed to become more consumer oriented. The voice of the customer needed to reflect in that, which is when it was felt that you needed a specialist division which could reach out to customers, spend time with them, understand them, and actually start reflecting that. That is how it was born. And the function initially did very well in terms of making the messaging more effective, more impactful, helping with measuring that, driving better creative decision making, driving better collaboration, planning the campaign to the T. So the function really thrived, and it was seen like the central point where everything was getting connected. It was the orchestrator of the whole thing. However, unfortunately, once the digital disruption happened, and this is early 2000s that we're talking about, the function started seeing a lot of disruption. What started as search coming in, after which platforms came in, after which the smartphone came in, then e-commerce came in, then influencer came in, and all of these started questioning the classical idea of account planning, which kind of assumed it's something that's going to be only about a campaign and only mass media, right? And as a result, this function, which for many years enjoyed a great run, was beginning to get questioned. That's the literature gap we're looking at addressing, saying in an environment where this traditional approach to account planning is not seen as relevant anymore, what all do we need to reinvent such that the function once again becomes relevant as well as value adding? To do this, we felt the study needs two questions. Firstly, we felt we need to develop a deep understanding of what is the challenge, what are the problems with account planning as things stand today, because how will we reinvent unless we don't know what needs to change? And second was really about, now that we know the problem that we need to address, what do we do? What's the agenda of reinvention to bring about those changes? So let me first talk you through the first part of the study. So in this, what we're saying is that account planning for the longest, right up till the 90s, was a very strong force. It was adding value. However, digital came. It disrupted things as we've classically seen them. Messaging was no longer singular. You could put out multiple messages. Messaging was no longer only broadcast. There were so many other mediums. Messaging was no longer only about brands creating. Consumer also had a voice. Messaging was no longer only about communication. You could create other 10 types of things. So as a result, the marketing playbook changed. Brands started becoming a lot more full funnel rather than top funnel. Brands started doing a lot of content, community, etc. Brands started creating different formats, short form content, etc. And ideally, the advertising agency would have also changed, but the agencies at this stage were not able to change. They were not able to cope because they were so classically conditioned to look at advertising in a particular way that they were just not able to pivot. And because the clients had no option, marketeers had no option, they started moving the mandate out. Two, three things happened. One, some of them, as marketing companies, started setting a digital setup in house. That was one. Two, there were a lot of these digital agencies that came into existence, saying, "Hey, we understand this new medium and we'll be able to service you." And three, a lot of the larger digital media companies, the likes of a Google or a Meta, themselves started saying, "We can also do creative." Because of this, the client ad agency relationship, which for decades had been supremely strong, took a hit. Clients no longer saw us as the central partner doing everything around brand building. And as a result, we were just the campaign providers. Because this happened, because our revenues model changed, our involvement changed, Obviously, it had a cascading impact on planning also, and that impact we can factor through four things. One is the rigor got compromised. Planning, which was born for rigor, really putting in the hard yards, really going into the depth, was no longer seen like that. That rigor became less. Our output, earlier planners were like quasi brand managers doing everything that the brand needed. Now our output got shrank, it got curtailed to just being able to help you build that campaign. The thinking got fragmented, right? There wasn't one planner who was owning the entire brand journey. There was a digital planner, a brand planner, a communication planner, an event planner. It all became fragmented, and the capabilities of account planners in advertising agencies suddenly seemed very outdated because they had been trained for a traditional media world, and this world was anything but that. As a result, both the stakeholders to which account planners service, right, which is the clients as well as creatives, started feeling they're not getting enough value. And today, because of that, we see the need to reinvent. Now that we know why do we need to reinvent, let's move into the second part to say what is it that we need to do, what will help it kind of resurface again and be value adding again. What we're saying is that today account planning's just become about campaigns. The reinvention must make it full circle. By full circle, what we're trying to say is rigor needs to come back. It needs to be not just about campaigns, but the larger growth agenda. It needs to be holistic. It needs to be full funnel. So fundamentally, the changes that we're proposing from the current era to full circus, one, like I said, just from brand building, it should be also about growth. Just from brand messaging, it should be also about solutioning, channel, experience. Just from top funnel, it should be full funnel. Just for efficiency, it should move to intensity. So the model, the framework that we're proposing is called full circle planning, which has two parts to it. One, we're saying move the account planning function upstream, go more into client territories of defining the brand, driving growth, and move it further downstream in terms of figuring out, okay, how do you kind of plan for the entire channel, for the full funnel? How do you plan experiences, etc.? So, from a brand tail point of view, we're saying become the orchestrators of the story, define the plot, and let that story now just not be rendered through an ad, but everything that might be required for that story to come alive. From a scale point of view, we're saying again, let planners have a role, whether it's about users, about markets, about usage, about scaling the products. Let them have an active role in each one of these. From a funnel point of view, classically, the brief would have been like this, right? The who, the what, the how. What we're adding now is to say, let's go the full funnel. Let's go the last mile of the entire buying journey. What stages, what state, what job to be done, what messaging, what kind of search words. So all of that really comes in. And last but not the least, we're saying experience needs to become a pivot of this, defining the brand experience right from the app or the website to the offline experience to the touch point experience to the servicing experience to the packaging experience, because that's how consumers do this. Now, to be able to do this, we're saying there are certain operational changes also that need to happen at a structural level, process level, talent level, monetary level. At a structural level, we're saying rather than just an account planner, have a three structure team where you have a brand and a digital planner, but you also have support and expert functions working alongside them. At a process level, we're saying make the process a lot more rigorous. Rigor needs to come back. Business, consumer emotions, instead of 4C analysis, look at 8Cs. Instead of just communication, develop whatever assets are required. In terms of talent, we're saying one, hire differently. Don't just see them as MBAs, hire from a diverse background. Two, reinvent training, make it a lot more practical. Three, culturally make the planner feel important, right? And from a monetary point of view, we're saying rather than project, move it more to consulting, which is let the planner be on the course of the entire piece and kind of always working on the brand and be built for hours, and that becomes the model. To bring this alive, that's what we're trying to do. That's the shift that we're proposing. Just to close, it makes many contributions, moves the literature forward, is first of its kind for framework, adds to the body of reinvention literature. And from a practice point of view, it's the first of its kind for planners, owners, creative teams, business heads. Of course, in terms of geography, it's just one and it's a qualitative methodology. And in terms of directions, we can validate, we can look at newer frameworks, we can deep dive into these, we can look at for operational areas. So lots really to be done. So thank you. That is what I had to share. Before I close, I would like to thank my RSC, Professor Purani, Professor Joseph, and Professor Matthew, as well as my TC chair, Professor Geeta, for all their guidance and help. Thank you very much.